Mannequin Chill is back, and we are following what the people want. Appreciate everybody that enjoyed our first round pick or player series that we released over the last couple weeks. Now we are going to pivot. And Shane, everybody wants to hear about startup strategy. Not rookie draft strategy. That's going to happen more coming down the pike here soon. But startup strategy, it's startup season. In the Discord, there's just constant questions about startups, how to navigate them, how to trade. Are we still trading up? Are we trading back again? How are we valuing rookie picks? So that's what we're here to talk about with this version of Mannequin Chill. We are going to go through 4 rounds of startup strategy, and we are essentially going to draft 6 teams each because we're going to be drafting from each spot. We're going to talk about trade up, trade down, value of pick strategy. All of that will be intertwined in this exercise. And just for everybody that is following along out there, we are using 12 teams, start 10, super flex, 1.75 tight end premium. Everything else is just sleeper standard. So set it up, start 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, a super flex, and 2 flexes, 4 -1 for passing scoring, and 1.75 tight end premium. So Shane, are you excited to talk through some startup strategy? I know you've done a couple startups already, at least one. What is your vibe on what it feels like out there in the startup streets right now?
It seems to be a lot of folks are still going quarterback heavy in the first round of the draft, despite last year's depressed performances at the quarterback position, and frankly, the year before that. What I've also noticed is that rookie picks seem to be going off the board really early. So it's funny because a few years ago, we've been playing this game long enough. A few years ago, felt like people didn't understand the value of rookie picks, but it feels at the startup time right now, people really do understand the value of having those, and more importantly, the flexibility of having them in January.
So do you think that is a product of the anticipation of this class, though? Because we just went through the exercise of round 1, pick 1 through 12, and you and I have been very adamant about the value of those top 4 to 6 picks. It's extremely high. So is that what you're referring to? Or are you referring to just the general flexibility of picks in general going to the late first, early second? Just people are understanding better the value of, because I don't disagree with it, the value of having rookie pick 203 is probably a better asset to hold from now until the summer, until you have to make the pick, versus a random running back, right? Versus one single player that could be impacted by the draft, free agency, both, an injury. All that stuff can change with a player. With rookie pick, even if it's a mid-second, it's still a mid-second, and it doesn't have to be converted into something that's defined until later. So which one are you referring to? Are you just referring to the high picks, or are you referring to like all picks where people really understand the value of the flexibility?
No, I think it's more the 101 through the 105, 106, because we've seen have a tier right now, and that tier feels it's stronger. Well, it is stronger than what it was last year. It's definitely stronger than what it was last year when we had Bijan at the top, Bryce Young, and CJ Stroud. A lot of people weren't in on CJ Stroud, even though he's now, QB2 or QB3 on KTC. So it's definitely that the class is stronger, at least perceived to be. That probably has a lot to do with it. But I like to also think that maybe it is because of the flexibility that's involved. At least I hope that's what it is. At least from my perspective, that's what it is. I just like having the flexibility of going, okay, in my startup draft, I might build this way where I leave the wide receivers a little light and I take one monster quarterback, but I have 2 early picks that I can play with. I can decide to go QB wide receiver or wide receiver. I can play with how I'm going to build my roster.
Yeah, I definitely think that is a product of people already being able to project the top half of the rookie class. So they can easily say, okay, I don't have a QB2, but I have the 103, knowing that that is potentially or almost guaranteed to be a quarterback if you want it to be a quarterback. Could also be a receiver. So I do think there's some correlation with, all right, I'm not going to take this receiver here. Maybe I'll pass on this QB, but I'll just take the 102 rookie pick, knowing it's probably a quarterback, but it could be a receiver. It could be a trade for a receiver. So I do think people are leaving holes on their teams in startups and putting rookie picks in there saying, well, hey, even if I have a couple late firsts, those are probably going to be receivers based on this class and what we know thus far. So I can leave a couple of receivers out potentially if I have the 110 and the 111. Doesn't mean I want to make a pick necessarily, but I'm kind of already penciling in that is going to be generally a receiver pick if I choose to make it. So I do think that's what's driving some of the choices of taking the picks, but I also think people have a much better understanding now of it used to be even a couple years ago. How can I take the 112 over Deontay Johnson? Because I've seen Deontay Johnson play. Now smarter managers are going, Deontay Johnson's a good player, but he is what he is. Even if I end up making the pick at 112 and it's a receiver that I wouldn't prefer to Deontay Johnson, that's on me. But I had 4 months to not make that pick. I could have traded it for something else before I had to make it. So it's kind of a push-pull, but definitely the value and the flexibility is on the side of the pick. So we're going to draft picks in this startup exercise, and we are going to draft for all 12 teams. So even though I'll make a pick and Shane will make a pick, we'll talk through each one. Some will give more narrative than others, probably in the ranges where there's a tough choice or a tier break or something like that. And then some picks will just go through and be like, yeah, that's an obvious pick. I probably wouldn't trade out of that spot. I'd probably just pick this player, and I'm more than comfortable with it. Shane, you're going to have to track your teams loosely. Doesn't have to be perfect, but we'll have a reminder, and I'll track it as we're going along where each spot drafts. So we kind of have a general idea of what the 12 teams look like. So we'll go ahead. I'll let you start. You drew the 101. Now, because this could go hours and hours and hours if we literally tried to explore a trade for every single pick, let's keep it to just kind of general trade strategy. If you do draw the 101, what would you be looking to do? What type of deal would you be looking to do? And we'll just keep it at that. You're on the clock at the 101. What are you thinking if you get the 101? Assuming you picked it, or maybe you randomly drew it. No context here. What would you do?
Generally, I'm going to be looking to draft one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks. That might be different than what the consensus is. Right now, the consensus is Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, CJ Stroud, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, all the way down at tier 5, somehow QB6 below Joe Burrow. I don't know what's going on with KTC lately. But anyway, I'm going to look to do, it's probably Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, CJ Stroud, I think is in that mix. If I'm trading, I'm looking to not trade back too far or probably really far, which probably sounds, what's the word I'm looking for? Contradictive. I want to be able to still, if I'm trading back, I'd like to still be able to draft one of those quarterbacks in the range. But if I can't pull that off, I wouldn't mind trying to build another way and trading back to the end of the first round, beginning of the second round, and looking at either rookie picks or wide receivers and start building that way. In this case, for this team, for this example, I'm just going to go consensus. We're just going to go Josh Allen. We'll make it easy.
All right, so Josh Allen is the 101. I did want to ask real quick, you're sitting on the 101. Clearly, you can say, hey, 101's on the block. Does anyone want to trade up? But let's just say that really hasn't worked. What offers, before you make the pick, you have 3 hours to make the pick. What offers are you sending? Give the people an example of an offer you are sending. What does it look like? What startup picks? What future picks? What are you trying to get that you think has a realistic shot of being accepted? You're looking at everybody else. Nobody has a team. Nobody has any players or anything. What are you sending somebody startup pick and future pick wise that you'd be willing to move off of this? What does that package needs to look like where you can say I'm building another way?
Let's say we're going that opposite build, right? We're just going to build their wide receiver, not quarterback. That's the tack that I'm going with. Probably try to see if anyone in that 110, 111, 112 range, maybe 109, wants to trade up, give me that pick and give me their second. I'll give them a 5th. I'd be willing to throw in another pick, like another swap, maybe even let them move up earlier in the draft, later in the draft, though. If you get my drift, sort of like I'll give up a 9th round draft pick and they give me back an 11th, something like that, to give them a little win. That way I can go wide receiver, and still have another pick to draft a quarterback if I want to. It won't be an elite quarterback. It won't be in the elite range, but it should be in that tier 2 range at least. So
let's say they tell you they're not willing to give up their 1st and 2nd, but they're willing to give you their 112 and a future 1st, and that's it. And you don't know what's at the 112. You may be going, I'm getting Jefferson, Chase, or Lamb, and they're all gone. So are you willing to do that? Are you willing just to do a 2-for-1 where you trade back 11 spots? And the quarterbacks you're probably looking at there are the 101, the 102, Justin Herbert, Kyler Murray. Are you willing to do that in a 1st for basically Josh Allen or the person's choice of their top tier QB? Would you just accept that, understanding you can build differently?
I'm probably going to ask for a little more. if you put my feet to the fire, it's not the worst trade. It's not something that I'm dying to take, but it's not necessarily something that I would easily turn down. Just for a discussion point, I mean, I think this pretty much covers everything from 101 to 103, like as far as trades, like the same thought process.
Yeah. I mean, if I have 102 and you take Josh Allen, I'm probably taking Patrick Mahomes, and I'm looking at the exact same premise as you. If I'm willing to trade back, if you can get the deal that Shane initially said, if you can find, and I hate to say a sucker, but somebody that we would call a fish that's willing to give you their 111 startup pick and their 202 startup pick for just your one pick. If you can find someone that's willing to give you like a 3-for-1, a 4-for-2, where you clean up on startup picks. What we always say not to do, right? Do not trade up into the first, giving up your second, your third, and your fourth, unless you're getting back what? A seventh, a ninth. Like you need to get picks back. So if you can find somebody, and this applies to every pick, basically. If I can find somebody that goes, oh, hey, I really need Pat Mahomes, I will give you my second and my first. Done. I don't even care what slots they are. 112 and 201, I'll take both picks for this Pat Mahomes. If you're willing to give me your 108 and your 305 or your 308, I'd still probably do that because the 308 is worth at least a first, if not more. And it's basically what you were saying by taking the 112 and a first, right? It's actually more value than that. So generally, if you're giving up one and getting back 2, 3, you're just taking those deals, regardless of who you're trading back. Even in a start 10, I'm generally willing, with a brand new team where I haven't built anything yet, I'm willing to take on the multiple assets. If we're talking like I'm still getting a first round pick back, a first round startup pick back, and I'm still getting other viable pieces that are worth at least a first plus. So just a thought, because people always ask, is this enough? And it's like, I can't tell you if it's enough or not, because some of the picks are going to be a mystery, but the pure value of getting back a first round pick startup, a future first, and a 6th round pick startup. Like, you just accept that. Don't even care what players are on the board. You just take it. I will take Patrick Mahomes. Same principles apply, I assume, for the 103 if you're sitting on that. But I'm curious because 103 is a interesting spot. Who are you taking at 103?
This is some pressure from the market. And I actually did this in a startup that I am in now that's still ongoing. I'd go with CJ Stroud. He's the QB3 in KTC, I think, QB3. This feels about right for him. There is concern that we're basing all this off just a rookie season, but it is an incredible rookie season. There has to be something given to him for having probably the greatest rookie season at the quarterback position ever. So I'll go CJ Stroud.
Okay, so at this 3 spot, is this one where you are willing to trade back 3 spots and still get Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, whoever you think your QB6 is, knowing you're guaranteed to get your QB6 at least, if not your QB5 or QB4? Are you willing to trade back 3 spots? And again, just like I asked you before, what is the proposal price you would ask for? You're probably not getting a future first, but what would you ask for where it's like that's enough value to let somebody else come up and pick their QB versus me getting stuck with the QB at the end of the tier?
Honestly, if I could get a 2-round pick swap between, say, the 5th and the 3rd, 8th and the 6th even, I think I'd be willing to do that. I can't get a future first. Rookie pick wise, I'm not going to be looking to do like seconds or anything like that. I think that CJ Stroud holds enough value at this position that I don't need to accept that. So, but I would be willing to accept something as minor as like a 2-round draft swap a little later in the draft, but not too deep into the draft where none of the players matter.
Well, and think about it this way. If you make it terms of the players that you're picking, so CJ Stroud, let's say CJ Stroud versus Lamar Jackson. In a league that already exists, someone comes to you and says, I have Lamar Jackson, you have CJ Stroud. You say you need to add to your Lamar to get my CJ Stroud. What does that person have to add?
Here's the problem when it's a player, right? The fungibility of the asset that you're getting back is lower. Then it's a straight up swap. It's this production for that production. That's why we generally lean towards making these trades with picks. But I don't know if a second's enough to move the needle for me. It should be, right? It should be. There are leagues that I'm in where I'll pay a second just to get the guy that I prefer. I don't know if I should just be moving off a player like CJ Stroud for the second.
You just hit on the point. You're willing to pay it for somebody that you prefer. But when you phrase it that way, you could also argue going the other way. If really to a T, if you, all the things you can say about CJ Stroud that differs from Lamar Jackson is the market value, isn't the trade that you're talking about right now literally testing the market value in your league?
Right.
So it's really just fake value if you hold it on your team and you say, oh, I have a more valuable QB. If you're truly thinking about, okay, the difference between Lamar Jackson and CJ Stroud is a second, someone offers you their 25 second so they can pick the guy they want from how you're going to build your team, it's not much of a difference, right? You're still getting one of the QBs you want and you're getting a free second. So it's okay to make a deal like that, but don't ask us necessarily, should I make a deal like that? Because it comes down to your opinion. Do you want CJ Stroud more than that extra second? And if the answer is yes, you just want him, then don't take the trade and don't offer the trade on the other end. Don't trade back if that's who you want to take. So that's how talking through these tiers of QBs works. I would tell you, Shane, a lot of times in startups, the person at the 103, even if they can say at the 106 they're going to get Lamar Jackson, guess what? They don't trade back that cheap. It's principle. I'm giving you too good of a deal right off the rip to give you what you want. I need more.
And for what it's worth, if you're in the 103 side and you're truly agnostic, you should just take whatever value you get added to the 103.
Yeah, you don't really want to pick at the 103 if you're agnostic, right? You'd rather scoop up extra value and move back to wherever your tier break is.
Right. So I actually, in this startup draft, I sent, hey, 103 on the block. I'm not looking for a lot. You know what I mean? Just send me a decent offer. I didn't get any offers at all that fell into that range. I didn't make any deals.
Yeah, and sometimes, when you play your hand like that and you make it seem like, hey, I don't really want to pick here, sometimes you don't get the offers because people realize, like, I don't have to make you the offer. You know what I mean? 104. I think the same principle applies. I don't want to pick at the 104 if I can pick at the 105 or 106. So I'm just going to pick Jalen Hurts. I don't feel great about it. This is not one of the spots, if we were doing a derby, that I would want to pick in. I would clearly go, if I'm stuck at the 104, give me the 106, 107. I don't care, especially if it's a third round reversal. We didn't mention this is third round reversal, but if it is, it gives you even more value coming back in the third round. So I'll take Jalen Hurts, but the same principles apply. If the 106 or 107 is willing to trade up 2 spots and give you a second, I think this is an even better spot to take it because you're an Eagles fan. I think the luster on Jalen Hurts is he's still good. He has reached his peak from a market demand, how much everybody has to have him. I think that was last year. Now it's like he just needs to perform and sustain. He's kind of where Lamar Jackson was like a year or two ago, where now it's like he just needs to continue to stay healthy and perform. And if so, he'll stay in this range. But I don't think I got to have him now because he's the best QB in the league. I think that's past. So he is a tough pick at 104. I'd rather pick at 105, 106, 107. So you're up at 105. It's gone 4 straight QBs. Where are you going?
So this is where I don't think you're out of your mind to start looking at, do I want to go Justin Jefferson? Do I want to go CD Lamb? Do I want to go 101? Now, it's a little early for me, so I'm not going to do that. But I don't think you're out of your mind if you start thinking because just looking at the quarterback range, this is where guys are very similar. I mean, that 1 through 4 range feels really similar, like the top tier to me. Here's where we start getting a little, I don't want to say sketchy, definitely not sketchy. Well, no, you know what? There's one more guy I think that belongs in the true top range. One more guy. I don't know how I missed him. Lamar Jackson. You literally just talked about.
So I assume you are taking Lamar Jackson here if you're forced to pick over the receivers, over the rookie picks.
Taking Lamar Jackson, right.
Yeah, when you start looking at the war in a league like this, the quarterback scoring, even if at this range they still score a lot of sheer points, you're starting to get into the range where you're risking picking a guy that falls more in the replaceable range than the difference-making range. So you're really just kind of drafting to keep up with the Joneses, just to have like a really valuable quarterback asset, but you're not guaranteeing yourself probably more of a contribution to winning versus if you hit on a Chase, Jefferson, Lamb, and they hit top 5 or better, they're giving you probably more impact relative to the rest of the league's receivers than the quarterbacks are here in this format. Right. So this is tough for me because, I am generally leaning towards going quarterback, but I also think it's unpredictable how a lot of these teams are going to play out as we get into 3 or 4 rounds. Any source you use for ADP, it's very interesting to see like where the quarterbacks come off the board. And when you look at those war graphs, Shane, and you realize that in round 3, I can probably get Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray late round 2, Justin Fields, Brock Purdy. And then you look at the war for those guys compared to Burrow, Herbert, and you're going, is it really 2 rounds difference? Basically what I'm paying for is I feel more secure with the asset that I'm drafting here. But if the guy I hit on is just Dak Prescott or is Kyler Murray and they just are what they've been, There's not a big difference between the guys I'm drafting here and those guys. So do you want to pay for essentially job security? What if they get hurt again? What if they have another bad season or they have a bad season? Like there is no such thing as job security anymore in the perceived mind of new dynasty players. If you get injured or are you bad, that job security crumbles. The demand for that player crumbles. So I'm going to still go against the grain, though. I am going to take my boy Joe Burrow here at 106. But same justification. If I'm at this spot and I feel at all queasy about drafting QB6, I think you can apply the same logic you did earlier with the 103, 104. If I can trade back to the 109, 110, 111, 112, and somebody is willing to make the decision for me, I'd be willing to do it for just a second. I think you would agree. Someone offered you 111 in a second for 106. You would just let them have this pick and you'd take the 111. Yep. I agree. All right. So I'm going to lock in a QB. 6 straight QBs. You're on the clock at the 107. Are you breaking the trend here?
Just looking at the quarterbacks that are on the board, Justin Herbert, Anthony Richardson. You just talked about the war impact. I don't want to reiterate what you've already spoken about. So this time we're going to go to wide receiver. I'm going to kind of just take Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson. One of the things that I realized about Justin Jefferson, and it was nice to see, is his value did not dip enough for you to be able to get him when he was injured. I was going to teams that were competing. I'm like, you're out. You're going to miss this guy probably for the rest of the year. And I was sending pretty significant offers every week, and there was no change in that value, which is rare. We have other wide receivers that miss a couple weeks and all of a sudden they dip in value. But Justin Jefferson is a locked and loaded 101 wide receiver, I think. So I'm just going Justin Jefferson. Trade scenarios are probably the same. What's funny about this is we're basically getting into the range, though, where if I'm dead set on building my roster through the wide receivers, which Team 7 is, I might not trade back, because then I don't want to have to go, all right, well, my number one wide receiver is going to be, let's say I'm Amon-Ra St. Brown. There's definitely a tier between the two, whether there should be or not. But if I'm going to build their wide receiver, I'm going to sit tight at this spot right here.
Yeah, and I'll push back on you that if you're committed to building through receiver, you're basically, what you're saying is that you'd rather start with Justin Jefferson versus CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, or the 101. But if I'm committed to just build through receiver and I don't have a huge preference, I would be willing to trade back, because I'm here at the 108. I could go Herbert. I could go Anthony Richardson. I could go CeeDee Lamb. I could go Jamar Chase. I could also go the 101 with the ability to say, okay, I have Marvin Harrison, who's probably at worst wide receiver 4, and I have Caleb Williams, or even it could be Jaden Daniels, to where they're almost guaranteed to be quarterback 10 or better. But I'm committing to kind of just waiting and holding the value of the 101. Whereas if I already know I want to build through receiver, or I already know I want to build through quarterback, you have to make the decision on, if you're committing to that, you probably don't want to take the rookie pick. Because here's what's not realistic, Shane. I picked the 101 for the value, right? The asset value. And then the guy at 111 drafts Justin Herbert, right? So let's say I pick the 101 here at 108. And then someone takes Justin Herbert at 111. In 2 weeks, can I go trade the 101 for Justin Herbert? Guaranteed. Or can that person go, you know what? I'm just going to stick with the guy I know. And I'm going to go, well, I need at least Justin Herbert for that pick. So I don't think it's fair to say you should be able to go just get anybody you want for the 101. But we value the pick that way. So just understand, you're drafting the flexibility of, it could be a receiver, it could be a quarterback, but in a league where it's a startup, it doesn't hold the same type of value as it would in an existing league. In an existing league where I earned the 101, I can probably go, hey, can I get Joe Burrow for the 101? Can I get Justin Herbert for the 101? Can I get Jamar Chase or CeeDee Lamb for the 101? And the answer might be yes or no. But here you're already kind of defining it. So you're drafting a little bit of like fake value at the 101 here, because you think it holds this extra value until it becomes a player, but everyone kind of already knows what it is and why you're drafting it. So with that said, I am going to draft Justin Herbert here at the 108. And I don't love it, but I think if I'm committed to building through a quarterback, I would rather draft that, drafting the 101 and thinking, okay, I'm going to be able to get Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels. So I'm going to go Justin Herbert, but I definitely think that's a pick where if you took the 101, I wouldn't hate it.